The training camp cuts continue. The Blue Jackets have lost a handful more players to Cleveland, and they also lost a game to the Carolina Hurricanes because that's just how the Blue Jackets do these days. We're going to talk about all of that and more on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to bring you news, stories, trials, excitement, yelling. I've got some yelling to do in this episode about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms and also over on YouTube. We are like 20 subscribers away from my goal of 250 before the season starts in like 4 days, 5 days, 6 days. The season starts at some point in the next week, and I only need 20 subscribers to hit my goal. So if you haven't hit subscribe yet, then I would super appreciate it. Makes my life easier, makes your life easier. Everybody wins. But let's talk regrettably about last night's game because it was not great. Question mark. It was the Blue Jackets have had better preseason games. They've also had worse preseason games, in my opinion. I am unsurprised by the results of this. Just looking at the game sheet, a bunch of the goals. So they lost 8-1 to the Carolina Hurricanes. They opened the scoring, which was great. Igor Chidakov with his fourth goal of the preseason, which I think says a lot about how he has been feeling. I've really liked him this preseason. I think he's really taking a step up. Obviously, preseason is very different to the regular season. I hope he can kind of keep it going. But I have been joking about how them introducing a new Russian rookie has really made him step up to be like, well, you can't replace me. And we're going to talk about Kirill Marchenko in a bit, actually. But Igor Chirnikov, fourth of the preseason, fourth in, I think, 3 or 4 games. So he's looking really good out there. Unfortunately, he was like the only one that was. No, that's not true. But then the Hurricanes scored 8 unanswered goals. They scored on the power play. I have some words to say about Eric Gudbranson's decision making in terms of giving penalties away in a bit. But the guys that scored the goals were all, for the most part, NHL guys. Kotkaniemi scored. Stefan Nason, who's probably going to be with the Hurricanes this season. Derek Stepan, who is on a PTO, I believe. Brent Burns, who I, again, forgot was a Hurricane until this game. Martin Necas, Brady Shea, Derek Stepan again, and Martin Necas again. So all NHL guys, bar Nason, who will probably spend a bunch of time with the Hurricanes this season, versus basically a bunch of bottom 6 guys that are fighting for the same 2 spots and Cole Sillinger at forward. Like, it was not a particularly overwhelming lineup for the Blue Jackets. I don't think. For me, and this is something I talked about in Monday's episode, I believe, the more interesting thing for me was the defense. Honestly, I think Nick Blankenburg had a pretty good game. He had just over 20 minutes of ice time, obviously playing on his offside. And genuinely, I think he was hurt more by playing with his defense partner than he was by playing on his offside. So, like I said, we're going to talk about that in a bit because I have some things to say about Eric Gudbranson. But for the most part, like, this feels like one of these games where I'm like, yeah, it sucks, but it's the preseason. It means nothing. I thought Tarasov was fine in his half of the game, or he played 26 and a half minutes. And then they swapped him out for Jet Greaves, who struggled, allowed 5 goals on 24 shots, which is not great. But again, he's a baby. Tarasov, 3 goals on 21 shots. Again, not great, but could have been worse. Carolina had Auntie Ranta in net, who I have long maintained is a very good goalie that just can't stay healthy. So unsurprising to see him have a good game. And looking at the lineup for the Hurricanes, yeah, they didn't have their like big names in, but they had Zingle, Stepan, Stastny, Martinu, Kotkaniemi, Natchez, Burns, Pesci, Bear, Slavin, Shea, a bunch of regulars plus a handful of guys that are probably competing for a bottom six spot versus uh, Cole Sillinger, I think, is the most experienced player on the who was the most experienced player on the forwards. Well, no, that's not technically true. Eric Gudbranson was there, Emil Bemstrom was there, and then it's a bunch of guys competing for spots. So unsurprising at the results, honestly. In a minute, we're going to talk a little bit more about this game. Specifically, we're going to talk about Eric Gudbranson because I feel a rant coming on. But first, I've got to tell you about BetOnline because it's where the game starts. It's your number one source for all football betting information this season and all other sports betting as well. You can find player development, team matchups, news, podcasts, in-depth articles, and analysis on basically every game and sport you can think of. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including things like MLB, MMA, boxing, golf. The NBA is starting up again soon, I think. The MLB is going into the playoffs. Football is happening. College sports are happening. You can find all of these things at betonline.net. So use your laptop or your mobile device to go to betonline.net to learn more because betonline is where the game starts. And where this section is going to start is with a little bit of a rant. And my rant is that I understand that there are people in the Blue Jackets front office that thought they were being bullied last season. I disagree. But that is not this rant. So they went out and they picked up Eric Gudbranson. The Blue Jackets, and I talked to Jeff Svoboda about this last week. The Blue Jackets were very young, inexperienced, and not super physical on the blue line last season. So they decided to fix all of this by picking up Eric Gudbranson for $4 million, which is what it is. I've talked enough about how I don't think that they needed him, and I don't think they needed to pay that much for him. But he's here. He's probably going to take a roster spot away from a younger, more talented defenseman. But I could do nothing about that. My issue with Branson is they picked him up to be a physical presence, to protect his teammates because they're getting bullied, I guess, and to fight and to be defensive. What Eric Branson did in last night's game was he saw Carson Meyer get hit. He then chased a guy across the ice to take a double minor for roughing. The first guy took a 2-minute penalty for boarding. So what happened was the Blue Jackets were going on the power play, and then Eric Branson took 4 minutes worth of penalties to put them on the penalty kill, which the Blue Jackets allowed a goal on. So if you're gonna bring Eric Branson in to do all of the things that I just mentioned, like, then maybe he should do those things instead of just taking stupid penalties. Like, you could see this coming a mile off. Like, having watched Branson a little bit last year in Calgary, like, this is what he does. He's here for grit and leadership and all of that bullcrap. That doesn't help the team. I cannot see any way in which what Gudbranson did in last night's game helps the team. Like, I got nothing. I genuinely cannot see any reason for him to be on the ice doing things like that. It's so frustrating, especially because, like I've just mentioned, there are younger, more talented, more effective guys competing for roster spots right now. If you're like, you don't need Eric Gudbranson. Andrew Peak does basically the same thing, except takes less stupid penalties. David Jiricek has that same kind of pain in the ass play that he does, except he takes less stupid penalties. He's younger. He's got more upside. Nick Blankenburg, Yeah, he's small. Yeah, he doesn't throw his weight around like Gudbranson. But like I mentioned in, I think, last episode, I would take Nick Blankenberg on the ice any day over Eric Gudbranson. But like it or not, he's here. He's going to get a regular roster spot. He's going to take that away from a more talented younger player. If he's going to do that, I wish he would do that and not also actively hurt the team while doing it. Like, if he wants to fight to defend big hits, sure. But there's a. I dislike fighting in hockey for various reasons, not including, not up to and including the traumatic brain injuries that result from being punched in the face repeatedly. If he's going to be here, then he should minimize the things he does that actively hurts this team, like going from being on the power play to being on the penalty kill. Because if he wants to fight, fine. Like I can live with that. I don't like it, but I can live with it. If he's just fighting to fight, which is kind of what it seemed like was happening last night, like the argument behind fighting is that it polices the game where the refs don't do anything. The refs had already called the penalty. I don't know. I do know what his thought process was. It is just so endlessly frustrating to watch things like that go down because it's unnecessary. It's the preseason. Did the hit on Carson Meyer suck? Yeah. The player was penalized for it. Like, I don't know. I don't know what he was trying to do beyond get this guy out of the game for another 5 minutes or what, but turns out he didn't even do that. He just got penalty minutes for trying to chase this guy down the ice and mug him, essentially. So that's the Eric Branson show. I'm looking forward to that happening at least 8 to 12 more times this season. And I'm going to yell about it each and every time. So that's going to be fun. Looking forward to that. Can you tell that I'm being sarcastic? I feel like I need to really up the sarcasm in my voice. But beyond the Gudbranson thing, beyond the scoreline, like I said, I thought the goaltending was fine. I thought Cole Sillinger looked good out there for his first preseason action. And beyond that, it was just a standard. Like I said, it was a bunch of guys competing for spots, and now a bunch of those guys have either been sent down or put on waivers. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next section. There's a couple of guys being sent down that I maybe wouldn't have sent down, but that's that's why I don't run this team. So that's all coming up in a minute on Locked on Blue Jackets. So the Blue Jackets sent a handful of players down after last night's game. They sent some players down that I probably would have, and then they sent some players down that I probably wouldn't have. I think the most notable for me is Kirill Marchenko has been sent to Cleveland. Carson Meyer has also been sent down. Jake Christensen has also been sent down. That one is unsurprising considering there's just no room. I talked about this on Monday. There's just no room on the defensive core. Victor Rask was released from his PTO, and also I believe Brendan Gaunt was put on waivers for the purpose of reassignment. So the Blue Jackets are down to, I think they need to make 4 more cuts on the skater side of things. They need to make 6 cuts overall, but they've still got all 4 goalies. So there's two cuts immediately. And then the guys that are left is let's see who's likely to be on the chopping block. Well, I say the chopping block. That sounds really dramatic. So the players that are left are Gaudreau making the team, obviously. Laine making the team. Jenner, Nyquist, Roslovic, Voracek, Sillinger, Robinson, Corrali, Danforth, Bemstrom, Chinikov. I would imagine all of those guys are going to make the team. And then they've got Mathieu Olivier, Kent Johnson, Liam Foodie, and Yuna Luotu. On the defensive side, they've got Werenski, Boquist, Gavrikov, Pete, Gudbranson, and Bean all making the team. And then they've got Juracek, Blankenberg, and Ben Harper, who I assume will be cut. The roster's got to be at 23 for opening night. That's 29 players, including the 4 goalies. Tarasov and Greaves are going to go down to Cleveland, so they need to cut 4 of Olivier, Johnson, Foodie, Lotu, Juracek, Blanks, Blankenberg, and Harper. So I don't think there's going to be any surprises, really. I think Harper's going to be cut. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Wotu. He hasn't really done anything of note in the time he's been here. I know that it's training camp, preseason, whatever. Liam Foodie, I think, probably goes down to Cleveland, which is a shame because I think he's looked pretty good in training camp. The only thing that not worries me, but I think Juracek goes down, and then I think Blankenberg is the seventh defenseman who then they just basically put a cap on his development because that's not how you develop young players. But anyway, I think Kent Johnson goes down to Cleveland, and I think Olivier makes the opening night roster, which is extremely frustrating because, again, you want grit, you want size, you want guys that are willing to fight. I don't think those things don't win games. Kent Johnson scores goals. Kent Johnson looks incredible out there. Olivier does not, and I don't know. I get that there's an aspect to hockey that I don't like, but I accept that it is there, and it's the physical side. And yeah, okay, maybe the Blue Jackets do need to get a little bit bigger. They do need to get a little bit more physical, but I don't think that should come at the cost of your young guys and your talented guys. So it's like I said, it's super frustrating. It is what it is. I'm still gonna be real mad when Olivier makes the opening night roster over Kent Johnson because I think Kent Johnson, with his play in Traverse City, with his play in the preseason, in training camp, I think he's looked really, really good. Especially when they put him between Laine and Gaudreau. I really like that line. It looks like Jenna's going to get that on Friday's game against St. Louis. I think they're playing. We're going to talk about that in tomorrow's episode. But I've liked Ken Johnson a lot. I think he's done enough to earn a spot on this roster, and it is frustrating to me that he's probably not going to get the ice time that he should because of other players that they don't need. They did not need to pick up Olivier, especially since they're paying $1 billion to Eric Gudbranson, who basically does all of the things that Olivier does. Frustrating. This team is so frustrating. They are on the cusp of being such a good team for me. And then they go ahead and they make these boneheaded moves, and it just makes no sense to me. But I'm sure that this is going to be a theme throughout the season. Is one of those players is going to do something stupid? I'm going to spend 6 minutes yelling about it. This is who I am as a person. This is who this team is. But that's kind of all I've got for you today. Like I said, tomorrow we're going to take a look at the game on Friday, I think. I really do think it's against St. Louis. I should have pulled the schedule up. So we're going to look at that game. All I know is that top line of Laine, Gaudreau, and Boone Jenner is going to be one to watch. So that's coming out tomorrow. Thank you for listening. If you would like to subscribe to the YouTube, then I am 20 subscribers away from hitting my goal before the end of preseason. So go and hit that button. You could find Locked On Blue Jackets wherever you get your podcasts, on literally every podcasting app of choice. If you have a place that you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Blue Jackets there. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter at LO_Blue Jackets. If you want to find me on Twitter, I am at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the podcast email is lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, I think I'm going to do a mailbag on Friday just to round out the preseason before the last game and see if anyone has any questions. So if you have questions, then feel free to send them in already. I will do another call tomorrow for mailbag questions because it's been a minute since I've done one. And I think we should jump back on that train. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day. I'm recording this at a weird time, but if you listen or watch, I appreciate you. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.